Hi, welcome to this astrology report for Monday, May 5th through Thursday, May 8th. Excuse me as I get my camera all set here and excuse my amateur setup. I'm excited to talk with you about the astrology of this week. When I was looking at the chart and the transits for this week, they seem to all be sort of telling one story. There are three different transits that I want to talk about today, and they all sort of go together, I think. There's definitely a certain intensity to it and some boldness, but I think that there are ways to use that to our benefit for some real healing in relationships within ourselves and just to sort of move things forward in as constructive a way as possible. So I'm going to go through all three transits, and when they're all sort of laid out, it paints a clearer picture. So let's just go ahead and get started. Basically, everything is happening from the Aries house. It's all about Aries stuff and the connections it's making to other parts of the chart this week. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Mercury conjunct Chiron. This is a really powerful signature, and it is exact on the 7th, on Wednesday, but we're going to be feeling it all week. So Mercury is in an interesting place where Mercury's recently been through a retrograde involving this sign and house. And Mercury is out of that retrograde now, out of shadow, but still in the Aries house. So Mercury's learned a lot lately and been through a lot. The way that we think, the way that we communicate has been transforming. And especially crossing over that Pisces Aries line, like Mercury did as a part of that retrograde. Mercury is much better off in Aries. When Mercury was in Pisces, we may have experienced a sort of a blurriness. It could have felt good in some ways, like a dreaminess, but it's likely that it was sort of maybe hard to grab onto concrete answers, solutions, feelings while Mercury was going through Pisces. We might have felt a little bit adrift, especially because there was other stuff happening in Aries too, not just that Mercury retrograde. But now with Mercury in Aries, feeling much bolder, much more sure of herself, and able to speak her mind without overthinking, without sugarcoating. And so now coming into this conjunction with Chiron says something about the potential for using our words for healing. It's like we're finding our voice. You might find this week that you're finding your voice about something that had been difficult to talk about before. You might notice yourself or others sort of speaking about pain, right? That Mercury conjunct Chiron, advocating for yourself or other people advocating for themselves in ways that have been difficult in the past. And as a result, there can be some real breakthroughs through sort of healing these mental and intellectual wounds that have been there and been a little bit stuck. I think that this week, Mercury conjunct Chiron suggests that we might be able to communicate with vulnerability. And it takes real courage to do that. And it's the courage and the vulnerability that help to open these healing doors. I'm going to add to this signature. There's much more going on, but I just want to kind of take it one piece at a time. I do think that it's easy to assert ourselves. It's a little bit more easy to assert ourselves right now with this Mercury conjunct Chiron verbally, and that can be a very good thing if used well, but you also may notice in yourself or around you some impulsiveness. The shadow side, the underside of this, if it's misused, that courage, that willingness to assert oneself, that finding voice for things that had been challenging before could spill over into, um, it could, whenever we have that energy within us, and I think the astrology suggests right now that many of us could have the potential to tap into that energy of speaking up for yourself. How do you do it with courage and vulnerability rather than reactivity and impulsivity? And it's got something to do with not being triggered, not allowing it to trigger you, staying grounded in your body. And I think that this week, we're really going to be able to do that because of the sun in Taurus. And this is actually the only part of the chart that I'm going to circle that isn't connected directly to an aspect happening in Aries. But I think we have to remember that the sun is in Taurus right now. And we just had a lunation, our last lunation, our new moon was in Taurus as well. And I love that. I love the way in which Taurus energy helps us be in our body. And I think that that's going to stop the Mercury Chiron energy, which has the potential to be bold and healing, from becoming reactive, overly assertive in a negative way, or ultimately triggering. Staying grounded in our body. And really, that's about mindfulness. Sometimes I think that mindfulness is a misnomer in some ways, and it is. I mean, it's a translation. So it's not exactly what I want to say is that it's weird how mindfulness is really about being in your body. You hear the word mind there, but I actually think that the translation from Buddhism has something to do with it's like being aware of the present, remembering the present, I think is more of the translation. And a major way in which we do that, in which we stay present, in which we stay mindful, is just being aware of your body. That's really all it is, I think. I think that's a huge part of it. But I think we kind of miss that. I think sometimes it's easy to think when the word is mindfulness that it's about your mind and it's about really thinking about what you're doing, but it isn't. It's about listening to your body. And we're more able to do that during Taurus season, but because Taurus loves to be in a body. So we can feel grounded by paying attention to how we feel in our body. If you're hungry, get something to eat. If you don't feel good, can you grab a warm blanket and throw it on your legs or wrap it around yourself? Can you make sure to sort of notice your surroundings and let your eyes spend time on things that look beautiful and appreciate the beauty of them? This is how we can stay grounded. Good morning, Jam. Thank you. This is how we can stay grounded in our bodies and stop that Chiron Mercury from being triggering. Instead, we can just be inspired by it. Okay, let's move on to another part of the transits this week. And this connects directly to this Mercury Chiron conjunction. What I want to talk about is the way in which it is sextiling this Jupiter in Gemini. Boom, 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 boom. Sextile. Okay, so Mercury and Chiron are conjunct, and they're sextiling this week Gemini, Jupiter and Gemini. Now, actually what's happening is that Mercury is coming into that exact sextile actually today on the 5th, Monday the 5th. This is a chart for Tuesday the 6th. So, but the whole thing is active all the time. Sometimes paying too much attention to the exact dates. You can see here from looking at this, they're all in the sextile. Mercury is at 23 degrees, Chiron is at 24 degrees, Jupiter is at 22 degrees. So even though technically Chiron already went through the sextile, and by the time we get to tomorrow, Mercury will have too, they're all within orb, as we call it, within 4 degrees of each other. especially 3 or 4. Even within 5, we might notice, but I tend to use 3 or 4 degrees. Or anyway, that whole thing adds a little note to these healing words, this finding of our voice, talking about things that have been difficult to talk about in the past. When it's sextiling Jupiter in Gemini, I feel like this suggests that the conversations that we have this week could be really expansive. Jupiter expands. These conversations that we have, they could open things, open doors, open our lives, open opportunities, open relationships, not close them. You know, wisdom comes from that assertion, from that vulnerability, combining the boldness and the vulnerability skillfully. How can that be done? If we can somehow combine when we need to speak about our feelings, being assertive and being vulnerable at the same time with skill, Jupiter suggests here that real wisdom can be gained through that process. And Chiron suggesting that too. This is all about sort of building our wisdom and our skills and changing our circumstances, and our relationships more and more as we go so that they're aligned with where we are now. At least the astrology suggests some potential for that. So I think that Jupiter here adds a little lightness to it, which is really nice. Aries can be really intense, really fast, really bold. Jupiter adds sort of a little grace, a little optimism, maybe even a little humor. So I love the way that it's sort of brightening this signature. There's also a learning signature where we're connected to Jupiter, which I've said before in terms of wisdom, but I think it's good to remember that we learn a lot. We have the potential to learn a lot from the conversations that come up this week, from the intellectual wounds that are healed, but also others have the potential to learn a lot from it as well. It broadens our understanding, and it broadens their understanding. I like this. I like this aspect a lot. I feel like there's a lot of hope there, like a hopefulness and optimism. And we can feel that as we move through the week, as much as there's this real desire and ability to talk about things maybe that we haven't talked about before. Okay, I'm now adding in the third transit that's happening this week that is significant. And wouldn't you know it, we're still over here in Aries talking about Aries. Now, Neptune and Venus were conjunct just a couple of days ago. And you know what? That is still active. In my horoscopes for the month, I really get into Venus-Neptune. It's literally my favorite aspect in astrology. So if you haven't checked out your monthly horoscope videos on my channel, be sure to do that for more information about this Venus-Neptune conjunction, even though it's fading now. But I will say very quickly that it is my favorite, I think, transit in astrology. There's something very mystical about it. Connections made during that time can be sort of otherworldly. Connections to people, connections to ideas, knowing what we love, sort of like love and beauty breaking through boundaries in some way. But there's so much more to it than that. So that's fading, and I spoke about it a little bit over the weekend, and it's also in the monthly horoscope. So check that out for more. What I wanted to talk about for this, what I think is really significant, is the Venus in Aries sextiling Pluto in Aquarius. And I feel like this is even a little bit more interesting because, once again, Venus was recently retrograde over the Aries Pisces line threshold. And now Venus is moving forward in Aries, and Venus is still in her shadow. So that just, again, it's like Venus has really been through something. We've been going through a process when it comes to our relationships, what we value, our self-worth in many cases, what we love, what lights us up, our creativity, finances. And now Venus is moving forward and we're starting to have more clarity and direction as a result of some of those processes. This is what the astrology suggests. And now Venus is making this sextile to Pluto. And Pluto is recently stationed retrograde. So Pluto is basically standing still in the sky, making him even a little more powerful than usual. I love when we have a connection from an inner planet, a personal planet like Venus, to an outer planet like Pluto. It's like there's so much happening in the world and we're bringing that in our own lives. We're sort of processing the era shift that's happening around us. And the world is changing and it's affecting our lives. And we're changing and it's affecting the world. Okay. This also suggests feeling empowered. I think that there's a confidence in our self-worth that we're tapping into this week. And it comes from that power of Pluto. It comes from the Venus retrograde and all the work that we've been going through in the last few months around Venus-related themes. Now we're able to move forward with a certain confidence and empowerment. We know how to express ourselves. It may feel very passionate, but it's magnetic to others. It doesn't feel negative. When people are coming into this week passionate, empowered, honest, vulnerable, it's magnetic and it's causing healing and growth. And it can even be fun. It can be a little optimistic. It can be a little humorous. This Venus sextiling Pluto also suggests, that desire for something to be deep. I think that we have the potential to be learning this week about our self-worth, setting stronger boundaries. I think we can be healing old power dynamics that don't make sense anymore. So although there are big feelings this week and bold words, when used skillfully and with that grounding and being in the body of the Taurus sun, I think there is some real potential for healing of us and of those around us, and therefore a little corner of the world this week. And so I wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a great week. I'll be back again soon.